This podcast is for the sales professionals at every level. If you want to convert more prospects into paying customers, then you're in the right place. Because Joe has spent the last 3 decades mastering buying behaviors, personality types, emotional and logical triggers. This is the Sales Genius Podcast. It's only a numbers game if you want educated. It's time to get educated. Let's go. Educated. Want to learn how to close deals. Want to learn how to sell more. That's what we're here for at Sales Genius. Let's go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. As I said prior to this, Kelly Shaw is here. 4 decades, the guy is taking top performers and making them elite performers. And bottom line, I want to know the mindset, the method, and what it takes to get to that point. Let me bring Kelly up on the screen. Kelly, welcome to the Sales Genius Podcast.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Well, 2 things. Number one, you can tell it doesn't take good looks because I don't have any. Number one. And number 2, I love your intro. Dude, I'm going to have to copy that, put it on my workout video because I work out every day. Hey, that's a good motivational song, but Tyson sales. Man, that's awesome.
Yes, I love it. Thank you for that. So before I say, hey, Kelly, run it off and let's talk to some people about high-ticket teams and how they can go and become better at what they want, I want to ask you a question. Okay, so your book, right, The Greatest Sale Ever Made, is a favorite among sales pros. So what inspired that story? And more importantly, what's the biggest takeaway you want everybody who's going to read it to actually, because in the show notes, there's a link to the book, right? What do you want them to walk away with?
Yeah, I was retiring from the financial services world about 10, 12 years ago. And I was just enjoying myself, having fun, traveling around the world, living the life I designed and that I wanted to live. And one of my best friends who runs a large insurance marketing company said, Kelly, you are so selfish. And I went, Matt, what are you talking about? He goes, you're living this great life, but you have so much knowledge to share. You need to get back out here and share your knowledge and help people. So number one, they can be successful. Number 2, you got to spread the wisdom because technically as of 2 months ago, it's 50 years. My first year in the business was 1975, March of 75. So 50 years in the business. So I think in the book, what my main focus of the book was, look, there's one thing that I've done in every business I've been in, and that I believe every salesperson should adhere to, is make the greatest sale, which is the sale to yourself, about you as an individual, you as a salesperson, you as a rep for whatever company, whether it's your company or the company you're working for. But you need to be have blinders on like a racehorse, right? You can't see any of the distractions. You know everything about your product. In fact, I recommend in that book, you need to buy your product. When I was selling insurance products, I owned every product I sold. From fixed annuities, variable annuities, index universal life, you named it, a term policy, I had it all. Why? Because I had to make that sale to myself first, so I really understood the value. And then, I think a lot of it has to do with, I guess there's a term in the military, we call it grit. Sometimes you just got to have the grit to get through the grind, right? And if you have that internal belief in yourself, your product, your service, and what you're doing is for people, not to people, and I talk a lot about that in the book too. It's like you owe it to them to, and in the book I talk about, this was supposed to be the name of the book until a mentor group told me to change the name, but I talk about you can lead a horse to water, but you can't, and you've heard this analogy, Joe, you can't make him drink, right? So our job as salespeople is not to take a horse to a watering hole that's not thirsty. Our job is to get on the back of a horse, ride it around the track till it's frothing at the mouth, and if you come close to a watering hole, you will not be strong enough to hold it back. See, that's what we as salespeople need to do. We need to get our clients frothing at the mouth. We need to get them so excited. I've heard different analogies of what sales is, and my analogy has always been and always will be: all sales is a transfer of energy and excitement about a product or service to somebody else, and you just got to make it easy for them to purchase it. Now, we're all salespeople. We're all salespeople every day, and if you want to see how good of a salesperson you are, just look at your paychecks or look at the person you're married to, right? It kind of tells you where you're at. I definitely was a good salesperson because I definitely married up, like really high up, right?
I understand that completely. Yes. I say that all the time. Look at my wife and it'll prove to you I'm good at sales. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and that's why I started on that journey of writing that book. And, I've always been very fortunate. I've been a trainer a lot of my life and a kind of a hired gun. There was back in the 50s and 60s, I can remember this. Most of the audience probably won't, but there was a show called Have Gun Will Travel.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember that TV show, black and white TV show, but basically a hired gun to travel and do whatever needs to be done. And I forget the actor's name. But, I've basically been a hired gun most of my sales career, where I go in and take over retail operations, whether it's car dealerships, boat dealerships, men's, women's retail, you name it, bars, restaurants. Not so good on the restaurant part, but the bar part I did very well. But my job was to go in there and turn around the culture and turn around the sales. In fact, I was hired in 92 and 93. There was a boat dealership on the coast of California that was going bankrupt. And they had me come in, and within 12 months, we went from being almost bankrupt to #1 in the world in volume and sales. Nice. Because I knew how to sell. I just don't know a darn thing about boats. In fact, Bayliner at that time was owned by AMF, so Bayliner, and we had Maxim and a few other boats and the jet skis and all that stuff. They invited me to a yacht show down in San Diego, and they said, "Hey, why don't you take I'm on the 64-foot yacht." And they go, "Why don't you take us out of the harbor?" And I go, "I don't know how to run a boat." And they thought I was kidding. So literally, they turned it over to me as we're like coming out of the dock and we're heading down the harbor. Well, I got the boat turned around backwards. Nice. I'm heading out of the harbor backwards. And the next day in the Union Tribune, there was a picture with the caption said, "The pointy end goes forward." And they said, "How in the world can you sell so many boats and you don't know a thing about it?" I go, "Well, I know one thing. Your boats are about 3 F's: friends, family, and fun." That's it.
That's it.
That's all we sold. We didn't sell anything else. We didn't talk about the engines or the pistons or the intake manifold or the exhaust or any of that junk. We didn't talk about the hull, and we didn't talk about, who cares? You know what we talked about? We painted the picture of them enjoying their time on the water with their family, eating, drinking, fishing, whatever the boat was for. We painted the picture so they could see themselves in that boat somewhere down the road, which you mentally have to take ownership, and it was so easy to sell boats.
Right, and most of the time they're not even using it, so it's the vision you painted for them is what's got to carry them for several months out of the year when they're not using it at all and paying for storage.
Yeah, one of my dreams was to own a yacht, and I ended up buying one a few years back, and they had a big black hole. But when I was on the boat, it was worth every penny of it. When I was away from it for 2 months, it's like, why am I paying for this again?
Right.
It was nothing. My wife going, "And why are we paying for this again?" I go, "Well, it's kind of a status symbol. It's fun. You're out there in this little mini yacht. You don't want to be pulling up next to a 200-footer because then you feel like you're nothing. But
right.
You got a nice 40, 45-foot boat that fleets 6 people. It's kind of fun."
Right. Yeah, I just came back from Newport Beach International Boat Show.
Oh, nice.
So they had, like $1 billion worth of boats all down at the thing. And I walked out and everybody's like, "Joe, you seem like a boat guy." I'm like, if I wasn't so logical for the rest of the year, I would say, yeah, you're right. In California, we could use it 9-10 months out of the year. But would I? No. So,
yeah.
But, okay. So let me throw another question at you. Okay. So, what would you say was the biggest and most powerful mindset shift that contributed to your longevity and your success in sales, right? Because you get pulled out, somebody goes, hey, you're selfish. So you have to jump back in to train people. But that still had to be a total mess with your head to go, oh, wait, I owe the world something that I have to come back and.
Yeah, I'll tell you, probably the biggest shift I had to make was probably many, many years ago. And I think this is, again, leads back to the book, right? It's like, I'll tell you a story. Her name is Doris. And this is really interesting because I'm going through some training stuff right now on something called sequence of returns. It doesn't mean a whole lot to the average person, but there's a time you can take money out of a portfolio that's growing at 10.5%, and then there's a time, because average rate of return doesn't mean anything until you start taking distribution. If you take distribution at the wrong time, you can go bankrupt really fast by only taking out 5% of your portfolio, even though you got 10.5% annual rate of return average. So a gal came into my office, this is probably 20 some years ago now. She had a little over $1 million. Her name was Doris, and she just retired from AT&T. And I knew what she needed and kind of what she wanted. And I did a good job. I just didn't do a great job. And I didn't feel like closing the little old lady. But I figured, with my written charm, I'm sure she will come back, right? And, she had AT&T stock. And this is when it divested and it became 6 different stocks. And she made a comment that, nobody ever loses money on telephone stock, which at that time was true. Not too long after that, it was not true. And she met an advisor who kind of blew smoke, where everybody blows smoke. And she decided to start taking about a 5.5–6% distribution out of her $1 million portfolio, because she wanted $60,000 a year, which was 5%, maybe a little under 5%. The problem is that's when the first stock market crash kind of came into it. And she was taking the $60,000 out in a depreciating portfolio. She came back to me about 5 years later, and she goes, Kelly, can you help me get my money back? I'm down $500,000. I've only got $500,000 left. And I go, oh my God, what happened? I'm looking at a portfolio, and I'm looking at her yearly returns, and I'm like, man, I can't help you make it back. I can save the rest of your money, but unfortunately, you're going to have to do some hard adjustments. Again, I did a good job. She didn't make any changes. She didn't hire me as her advisor. She came back 5 years later and wanted to know if I knew the name of a good attorney, because she wanted to do a reverse mortgage because she was broke. And she couldn't afford to stay in her house without a reverse mortgage. And I think if I had just done my damn job the first time, if I had been a little bit more, you can use a lot of words here, pushy, a little bit better closer, if I would have, given her enough pain points, if I would have painted the right picture, she wouldn't have been broke. And I think about that, and I think as a salesperson, if you represent a great product and you're a great person and you work with a great company, or even just a really good one, then you owe it to the clients to help them buy your product or service. You owe it to them. And I think a lot of salespeople don't look at it that way. A lot of salespeople think their sales is something they do to somebody versus something you do for somebody. And that was a big mind shift for me. So I'm not afraid to be a little overly aggressive and try to get the deal closed from time to time, because if I know if it's the right thing to do, I don't want them walking out the door, because they could go down the road, buy an inferior product from an inferior salesperson who works for an inferior company, and the next thing you know, it could have horrible consequences on them. So that was probably the biggest mindset, and that was about 25 years ago. Up to that point, I was rocking and rolling. I've never made 7 figures in a year personally, but I've come awfully damn close 4 times. And it's something I'd like to do here in the near future. But that mindset shift took me from low 6 figures to really high 6 figures really quickly.
That's fantastic. Okay, so talk to me, because again, technically you went through, you sold like crazy, and then you made it out, right? And you were like, I'm living a life I designed. Okay, so coming back into it, to me, I would say, from what I know, that helped you more so keep a work-life balance, where not necessarily in sales when you start, do you even have anything close to that, right? I always laugh and say there's no such thing, but I do want Kelly Shaw's take on that. So
Yeah, so I was very, very, very fortunate. Many years ago, I joined a coaching program called Strategic Coach. I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Sullivan, but probably one of the best coaches. And one of the very, very, very first things I ever learned was to kind of segment your days and your time. And I'm not very good at calendar management, so we know that from me getting an email from you and go, oh my gosh, I have a podcast today. I forgot.
and me right back going, I can't get the computer to work. Yeah, exactly. With sales guys, that's what happens. You let sales guys be in charge.
I'm a sales guy. Just let somebody else do that. But I learned the Colby method. Unfortunately, Kathy Colby just died this week. But how to hire the right people to do things that I'm not good at and I don't want to do. And I learned to separate business from home. And I was able to work really focused at work. I was able to work for probably 10 years, 3 days a week. Most months it would be 4 weeks a month. But there were months I would only work 3 weeks. But I was really focused on those days of doing nothing but generating activity. I walked my kids to school every day. Don't know how many times I played I Spy with Madeline and I. When you take the same path to school every day, there's only so many things you can play I Spy with, right? But I was able to do that. I was able to coach my kids' soccer teams. I was able to volunteer and then help run a ski and snowboard program for 25 years every Saturday during the winter, because I wanted to spend time with my kids because that was important. And when I would interview clients, I would tell them, hey, listen, I'm down in calendar management. My life's worse. I might get a phone call from the school saying, hey, your wife forgot to pick up your daughter again today because it's half day. Why they need half days on a Wednesday, I don't know. To me, half day should have been a Monday or Friday. But I know and I would tell them, look, man, you're important, but not as important as my kids. So if the school calls, I'm out of here picking them up, unless I can get my assistant to go get them, which is
right.
Did happen a few times too. But yeah, I was able to have that work-life balance. And I was able to design a life where, I don't know if you've talked about this, in my bio, I don't know. But, I have a house in Spain. We're in Spain 3 months of the year. We travel to a minimum of 2 to 3 new countries every year.
Nice.
Why? Because you can design and build a building. You can design and build a city. You can design and build a spaceship, which is what I was doing to go to the freaking Mars. Why can't you design a life that you want to live, that you feel good about, and it's a joy to wake up every day? Gabriel says 50 years. I am 72 years old. Basically, I'll be 72 in another month or so. I'm probably in better shape than most people in their 30s. But I have a zest for life. Why? Because life is changing, and I love new music. My wife and I go to music festivals. I went to the Coachella Music Festival 19 years in a row.
Wow.
And I just stopped going 2 years ago. I swapped it out for a music festival in Spain every July called Mad Cool, which is a tremendous 3-day festival. And we're going again in July for a month. And I study every day. I'm on I'm on a training session today, a 3-day training session with another company that I admire because they have really good selling techniques. And there's some dude from Ireland who's got a 3-day workshop next week, 3 hours a day. So I'm going, okay, I'm sure I can pick up something because I learned something from my very, very, very first mentor. I don't even remember his name. He was an old guy in the shoe business. But he told me when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot. You've got to be growing. You've got to stay green your whole life. That's the secret to longevity. And I agree with that. He also taught me many, many years ago how to make people laugh. And I can just walk up to strangers on the street and say something to them, talk to them, whatever. My wife goes, how do you do that? I go, it didn't come naturally. You know, I remember applying for my very first sales job. I just come out of the Marine Corps. I didn't have really any skill other than I could put on my resume, I could blow your head off from 500 yards. You'd never know it was coming. Doesn't really go over too well, especially if you're applying for sales, right?
Yeah, and no boss wants that in their employee.
Yeah. I will tell you, it does work really well if you've got teenage daughters. Because when the boyfriend comes over and he says, Mr. Shaw, what'd you do in the Marine Corps? And I go, I was a sniper, just so you could know I can blow your head off from 500 yards. You'd never see it coming, dude. They would look at me and almost like mess their pants. But anyway, so this is in the days when you had to hand out resumes. And this gal interviewed me. I thought I had a job. She goes, you're the worst interview I've ever had. Your hands were horrible. You didn't shake my hand properly. I mean, she just raked me over the coals, right? And I thought, why don't you just put me, on the gang type and kick my ass into the ocean, right? And with a shark-infested waters. But she gave me a piece of paper. She said, you know what? I don't know why you want to get into sales, but you know what? If you do this, and she wrote something on a piece of paper, then when you graduate, if you're the top of your class, I'll get you a job. It won't be in my store. You don't wear the clothes, but I'll get you a job. And I've got 2 people in mind. I said, okay. So that was the Dale Carnegie sales and public speaking. There were 2 courses, right? You have to do both of them. And you have to learn to get up in front of people and talk, which was like, I was petrified. But I did it. Top of my class, I came out. She got me a job at a small little family shoe store. And then, she got me a job at J.C. Penney's first, which one of her friends ran. That was my very first job, J.C. Penney's. And then she helped then get me, after I kind of cut my teeth, she got me a job at the shoe store, which is where I met my first mentor. And that was it. I later on went to work at Nordstrom's, and I worked for a company called Bernie's and Bottoms, which is a guy named Bernie Brotman. His sons are Mike and Jeff Brotman. I manage their high-end men's clothing store in downtown Seattle. They're the founders of Costco. And I remember they showed us the very first Costco, like 1981 or something like that, whatever year it was. I thought they were idiots. I thought, like, I'm 20-something years old, and they're showing me a warehouse full of pickle jars this big, and, I'm like, who buys this stuff, right?
Who buys it? Yeah. Who needs that many pickles? Yeah.
Now I go into Costco for one thing, and I walk out $350 later, and it's like, honey, could we please try to make these trips less than $200?
Right. And not any longer, man. No way. Yeah. I remember it used to be, oh no, it's going to be $100 trip. Then it became a $200 trip. Now it's a $300 trip. And I got kids out of the house, and it's still a $300 trip. I don't even understand.
Yeah.
So, okay. So it's funny because in all of the sales realms I had, anybody who came out of the military, I was giving them a shot, right? Because you're following instructions. And it was easier because they could check their ego and follow the instructions. Then all of a sudden they jump up to the top of the board and become the best salesperson until they learn what a sale is, and then they fall right back into the huddle.
And I'm glad you said that, Joe, because when I would be hired, like when I went into the boat company, first thing I did is I fired every salesperson but one. One I thought had what it took to be successful, to stay successful. And I knew they weren't a cancer to the other salespeople. Right. And when I would hire people, I would tell them, stay away from the old timers. If I had to keep the old timers, stay away from them. They'll teach you everything that will not work. And you don't want to be like them. You want to, so I would bring them in brand new and hire. And yeah, military people do well. Why? Because if you've ever had a DI for a boss, a drill instructor,
yep,
another manager kind of yelling at you doesn't really bother you because they're nothing like a drill. I go, you want to have a hard boss? Go in the military for a while. You want to know what what it's like with bullets going over your head? That's tough.
Right.
Some boss yelling at you, telling you to do your job is like, okay, sorry about that, boss. Well, I'll step it up. No worries.
Right. I'll just change. It's easier. Yeah, exactly. And your yelling is nothing like what I'm used to. So, Kelly, let's talk about this. Let's talk about highticketteams.io. We've had a scroll across the bottom here. Explain to the audience. We're creeping up on 30 minutes. So I want you to explain to the audience exactly what it is. Why would they go to the website? What are you looking for? What should they be looking for when they get there? And see what's going on.
Yeah, so I decided to go back into the workforce because basically I was bored. So in January, I just ran across something on LinkedIn, my LinkedIn feed. I have 5,000-6,000 people on my LinkedIn page. And I saw something that looked really interesting. So I ended up saying, maybe I'll just see what they want, see what they offer. And basically what they do is they're almost like fractional managers. So what we do is we help business owners who are in the business of scaling their business. They've kind of got their processes down. They're pretty decent, but they want to grow, and they want to grow quickly, because who wants to grow slowly, right?
Right. I was going to say.
What we were able to do quite a while ago was secure 5,500 job seats on LinkedIn. We also use Indeed and Monster and Rise Higher and all those other places, but really the best quality candidates are on LinkedIn, bar none. Right. So we kind of figured out the secret sauce for a bunch of different industries, whether it's insurance, whether it's home improvement, whether it's solar, you name it. We get a lot of people that have been kicked off of those sites because they basically, what they're looking for are 1099 or commission heavy sales roles. And those are different animals. And we know how to weed them out through our process so we can deliver high quality candidates to the owner, the hiring manager, whatever, that are somewhat pre-vetted and pre-qualified. So they're not spending 12 hours a day, 6 days a week going, like our biggest client was processing about 5,000 applications a week.
Wow.
Yeah, they just came to us a few months ago. Of course, they didn't think it was going to work for them, but they ended up buying and they gave us a shot. And now they're going, dude, this is like phenomenal. We're spending no time and you're giving us 5,000 a week. We want 10. We want 10,000 a week. And we said, okay. We ended up hiring 60 new VAs to help go through that. But we have so basically what we're doing is kind of what I've always been doing, right? Hiring the right, or providing the right quality, basic fit salespeople. And they could be really high quality to a company, so they don't have to go through the rigors of going through a bunch of It's so funny because almost no resumes are truthful these days. It's amazing.
They're all written by AI.
They're all done by AI, right? And look, there's nothing wrong with AI, but you can give AI a personality and tell it to do something that's more realistic to you. I use AI for a lot, but I always make AI like, okay, remember, I'm kind of a smart ass and, do it tongue in cheek and let's have a little bit of fun with this, because that is my personality and that's what I'm going to come across with every day. So you might as well get used to it. So we're able to help people that are really interested in scaling their businesses go to that next level or the next level or the next level. And it's really interesting. And one of the things I was excited about, I'm not so excited about it now, but I was then, I was like, oh, I haven't done any cold calling in 35 years. This will be fun.
Yeah, it'll humble you quick.
Yeah, it humbled me really quickly. I will tell somebody that my strong point is face-to-face, people-to-people, on the phone, via Zoom, via, whatever, Google Meet. It is not cold calling people. So it's been humbling. But, again, that gets back to my philosophy is, dude, when you're green, you grow. You've got to get better every day. Because one thing I learned a long, long time ago, there's no such freaking thing as treading water. You're either moving forward or falling behind. Well, when you're fighting a rip current, you better know not to try to fight it. You better swim across it and get out of the way and move forward. And that's what it's like in life. None of us can afford to be complacent and stay put. We've got to learn to grow and get better every single solitary day.
Agreed. I love that. There's no such thing as treading water. And I think if you look at it from both of our experiences, you've got me beat by 10 years in the sales world. It's literally, that's what happens to salespeople, is that they think they can tread water and get by another day without doing the activities that generate the results. And they just think, oh, inertia is coming with me. It's going to come with, and you're like, it's not. You have to keep the movement, right? Somebody told this to me a long time ago, and I remember it to this day, is just, they said, even God can't steer a parked car. You have to be moving, right? You have to be moving. And if you're moving, then the forces can go through, right? Even if you go, the universe will take care of me. Not if you're just sitting there, right? You gotta be doing the right things.
It's kind of like a story I heard many years ago, and it stuck with me. It's like this guy was talking. He goes, "Yeah, my best friend. He keeps praying. He keeps praying every day. Lord, help me win the lottery. Lord, help me win the lottery." And after 5 years of praying, the Lord finally spoke and said, "Dude, do me a favor, buy a lottery ticket." It's like, look, you can pray all you want, and look, I am very, very, very in faith, man. Believe me, I got a lot of articles. I just wrote a great killer 12-part article about why you should go to church even if you're not a Christian. But, you got to help God out a little bit, right? I mean, you got to take the first step. You got to be in motion. You buy a ticket.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Okay, perfect. I want to say thank you so much for taking time out of the middle of your week. I know you got a whole bunch of other stuff to do. We grabbed you at the office, right, so we can get you to come on. But I am truly grateful you came out to share with us. If there's one thing you want to leave the audience with before they leave and before they go back to go sell something else, what would be the one thing that Kelly says, guys, walk away with this?
Here's what I always tell every salesperson, and it came from a podcast I did about a year ago. I was on this big podcast, and somebody asked me, Kelly, is there like a secret word, a magic word, and could you share that with the audience? And I said, why? And she goes, well, because I want to share with my audience. Why? She goes, and I got so flustered. I go, the word is why. Why is this the right time? Why are you doing this now? Why? Ask questions. Learn to ask the who, what, when, where, why, and the how is in there somewhere, I think. But dig deeper. And too many people will, if you ask surface level questions, will give you surface level answers. You'll never dig deeper. And my wife will watch me sometimes when I'm helping her close, or one of her agents close some real estate deals. I'll go down like really deep, in asking questions until I get to what I know is really the bottom line. Now, once I know that, it's easy for me to close and help them out. But until then, if they're giving me surface level answers, I can't help surface level problems. I need to help bigger, deeper problems. I want to know, why is now the right time? Why wasn't it 6 months ago? If you don't do it now and you don't do it 6 months from now, what's that going to be like a year from now if you're still going through the same situation? And so I always want to say, just remember why, and dig deeper, ask a lot more questions. I've been a question-based salesperson for probably 35 years now. And it helps me sleep at night. It helps me design a life that I actually enjoy. Working and living in a city I enjoy working and living in, because work isn't work to me. Work is a hell of a lot of fun, dude. And I get to help a lot of people. And when you help people and you see them years later when they come to you, like I did recently, I was at the Trump Resort at a golf thing down in Miami. Guy came up to me and goes, are you Kelly Shawn? I go, are you the FBI or the IRS?
Right, yeah.
I saw you speak like 10 years ago at a conference in Nashville. He goes, man, you're like the second best speaker I've ever seen. I go, who the hell was the first?
Right.
He goes, I took all the points you talked about that day. He goes, now I'm a 7-figure a year income earner. I'm the #1 agent in my brokerage. And a lot of it came from the information. Well, you did the work. I just shared the info. But he was open-minded enough, and he had the desire to be number one. Because one thing I do believe in, this is probably something else I'll tell everybody, I don't mind getting my butt kicked in a sales contest. But dude, if I come in second, I'm going to be the most miserable SOB until the next contest, because it'll never happen twice.
Right.
Ever happen twice. I will kick your ass next time. And you're going to be running bleeding because it's so bad.
Right. I love it. I love it. So again, Kelly, best place for people to reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn, or K Shaw, just K Shaw at highticketteams.io. If they reach out to me, they can get a free copy of my book. I think the book's great. It is now an Amazon bestseller. I got the badge to prove it. So,
right.
If they would like a copy of that, I'd love to share it with them. But yeah, just reach out to K Shaw at highticketteams.io. And if you got any questions, or you want to just chat about sales or whatever, just give me a call. I'm always willing to help. There's one thing I love doing is helping people, especially salespeople, get better at what they do or what they'd like to do.
That's fantastic. Kelly, thank you so much. And everybody, as we typically end every show, I'm going to go ahead and say, go out and sell something. Thanks, Kelly. Appreciate you.
Let's talk about sales, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the challenges that may be. Let's talk about sales. A little bit of